Hi everyone, I'm going to do a nice simple spring landscape scene today. I have got my 3 brushes, a round number 10, a round number 6 and a number 2 rigger, a piece of Saunders Waterford which is a cotton paper, and it's about 5 by 7 inches there. I've also got a Cotman palette which I'll pop in a link in the description that I'm using for all of this series, just to make it easy and just to show you how you can use the same colours over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to start with a nice sky. We're going to go sky, field, trees. Might pop in some of the yellow of the rapeseed that's just starting to come out in Lincolnshire. So round number 10, I'm popping on some water. So this is over the sky area, and we're doing about 50%, so about halfway down. I'm going to come over it twice, make sure I've got this nice and evenly coated. I'm going to go for a nice spring coloured sky, so I have got cerulean blue in here, still with the same round number 10, loaded with water. I'm dipping directly into the paint. I'm going to come on with a nice circular motion. You can see I'm pushing the brush down, and that's controlling the paint. Take a little bit more in there, push that brush down, circular motion. I'm going to get a little bit of cloud, not too much though. The pushing of the brush down puts you in control. If you let go, that's when it comes out of the brush. You tend to be quite tentative when you're new and do lots of actions like this, and actually pushing down and holding the brush down controls the paint much better. A few little clouds in there. If I want to make the blue any stronger, I can come in and just take a little bit more of that paint in. I want it stronger in places, so I've got less water on the brush, just taking a little bit more of the paint. The nice sort of spring, we've had some fantastic weather, so nice sort of spring sky. I'm going to swap down then to a number 6. Swapping down to a smaller brush puts me in control. I need to be a little bit more in control. I'm going to take a little bit of a darker blue in. So this is ultramarine blue. And again, it's that same sort of circular motion. I'm just going to whip some of this through. I've got a wispy effect towards the bottom here. You get those wispy bits in the sky. It's just nice to have a different tone in the sky. I'm not going grey today. We're going to make the most of that spring coloured sky. Okay, so I need a little bit of a green now, and I'm going to go fairly dark. So this is Viridian, so it's quite a bright green. I'm going to pop some on my palette over here. If you're on a wood pulp paper, you'll need to do this in advance, so you've got it ready to go. And then this here is burnt sienna, so any sort of brown will make that green more natural. So I'm just going to take some of that brown in. So I've used burnt umber in the past, even a bit of red would work. You're going to get a much more natural green. I'm going to keep my brush upright, and I'm dabbing in. So this is along the bottom of the skyline, so it's still nice and wet. The paint's nice and thick, and it's going to create these really nice soft trees. You want to vary the height of the trees. So they can do that by varying the pressure of the brush and how many times you're dabbing. So if you want bigger trees, you're going to dab more. If I take a little bit of ultramarine blue, you notice that I didn't rinse my brush into that mix. I can just get something that's a little bit darker. just towards the bottom. And that nice dark green is going to give a real contrast to the spring greens in the foreground and the yellows that we're going to use. Okay, so I'm going to dry that off. Just before I do, because see something that's happened, and I'm going to show you what to do to rectify it. So I'm just cleaning my brush really well. Now I've dabbed a little bit of green in. It's probably splattered when I've been doing the mixing on the palette, and I'm just with a clean damp brush, I'm just lifting that out. So that shows you if it was a wet brush it'd put watermarks in, but because I've dried it off and it's clean, I've just lifted that little bit out. Okay, I'll dry that one off. Okay, so that's really nicely dry now. I'm going to come into this bottom section, so I've just changed my water so it's nice and clean again. I'm going to wet the whole of this section, similar to how I did the sky with around number 10. Then we're going to come in with some fresher greens and some yellow. So come over it twice, get a nice sheen on there. So I'm going to start with some lemon yellow and just bring that in towards the front. So I'm doing a little bit more of a horizontal stroke this time. Then I'm going to pick up some of the cadmium yellow, which is a warmer yellow, and bring a little bit of that through as well. So I'm getting a mixture of the two. It's not all one tone of yellow. Give my brush a rinse, pop it into a little bit of the water. I'm coming into some sap green. If you haven't got sap green, then you can use a mixture of a yellow and a blue. So cobalt blue is always a good one with a yellow. Sap green's quite a fresh green. It's the only real pre-mixed green that I use directly from the palette. Everything else I mix up. So I'll use the Viridian, but I mix it always with a bit of brown. So I'm coming towards the back, getting that nice fresh green in. I'm going to bring a little bit through. Just towards the bottom. Give that one a rinse. I'm going to come down to my number 6. And then I'm going to pick up some of the ultramarine blue. So what I want is a little bit of natural shadow. You see how I'm still doing horizontal strokes? I still want those horizontal strokes. This denotes the surface. So it's circular motion in the sky, but horizontal strokes when I've come down to this bit. I'll always tell you how I'm using the brush, because how you use the brush is one of the most important things. You're drawing with the brush all the time. So these are upward strokes, just towards this bottom corner with a little bit of the ultramarine blue. Okay, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and what I've got now is a little bit of natural sponge. So when you're shopping for your natural sponge, you're better to not buy art sponges, because art sponges aren't really very good. They don't have the same level of bobbly bits. You want to look for a proper natural sponge. This one's got lots and lots of bobbly bits, as you can see, and that's what you want with the texture for painting. So the first thing you're going to do is wet it and wring it out really well. So you want to make sure there's less water on that. Then you want to dab that off onto the kitchen towel. You want the least amount of water. You want it to be soft, but you want the least amount of water on there. You can see there's a tiny bit on my hand, but not a lot. You don't want it flowing too much. Okay, so I'm going to start to take a little bit of sponging on. Just going to clean an area of my palette. I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. So just clean that bit off. So you can try to dip directly into the pan. It is quite tricky. My tips for sponging is to use a palette that is flat, because if you have one that's welled, it soaks up much more into the sponge and then it becomes blobby. So I'm just going to use this nice cadmium yellow and take the sponge, squeeze it a little bit, and then take up that colour. Then I'm going to dab on lightly. And as I'm dabbing, when I lift up, I twist a little bit. Lift up, twist, lift up, twist. This gives you a natural effect. If you do it all in one way, then you end up with a pattern. You can see the pattern, and we don't want that to happen. So we're going to start to build up some of the rape flowers from the rape seed, just into the foreground here. So nice and light. If it becomes too blobby and patchy, that's because you've got it too wet. Dry it off and then start again. Okay, with that and that, I've still got yellow on that brush. I'm going to dip into this green here. Just takes that, some of that across. We may as well use the greens that we've got there. So that was a mix of Viridian and burnt sienna. And then I'm going to take the sponge again and dip that in. I'm going to keep this now a little bit lower. Remembering to twist a little bit. You don't have to do an excessive twist, it only has to be a tiny little bit. Nice and light to the touch, not too heavy brings too much out. Takes a bit of practice. I'm just coming slightly through the yellow. Then I'm going to twizzle round. I'm going to take my long thin brush, which is my rigger. Take a little bit more of this yellow mix. Whilst it's still damp, I'm just going to bring through a few little strokes. I find it easier to paint downwards to get a fine point. If you don't mind being the other way round, do it the other way round. I'm just really telling you the tips that I find that work. It doesn't work for everybody. Some people find it a bit of a struggle to understand what they're painting when it's upside down. I'm just doing a few strokes in here. Then what happens with this is, because there's some wet bits where the sponging is, it means that it becomes more plant-like than grass-like. It breaks through and flows into those spongy bits, and it works really effectively there. Right, I'm going to dry that one off. Okay, so that's nicely dry, and I want some more of the yellow. I have tried to take out as much of the green as I can out of that well. I want this to be nice and bold now, so I'm taking a lot more of the paint in. If you want to warm it up a tiny bit, this is cadmium red. You can just warm it up a tiny bit. Make it a little bit bolder. That brush of rinse. Okay, then back to my sponge. I've rinsed it. I'm just going to do this. Dab it off really well. And then I'm going to squeeze and then pick up the colour. And then I'm going to come over those bits again. So I'm really building up the emphasis in the foreground now. If I just dab some of that off, I'm going to come into a little bit of the neat yellow. Bring some of that through as well. Give that a bit of a rinse. If I pick up my rigger, I'm just going to come into just a tiny bit of the ivory black, or any sort of grey will do. Make sure it's not too strong. Just going to dry my hand off on my trousers. I am going to pop in a couple of tiny little birds. So a little flick is all you need. Rest on your little finger. Odds work better than evens. Try and space them so they're unevenly distributed so you don't get a pattern. So I've popped 5 in there. Okay, I'll dry this off and then take the tape off. So there we go, all finished, a nice pretty spring-like scene which goes through several techniques on how to create the clouds in a wet and wet sky, and how to do the soft focus wet to wet trees, how to do the sponging to bring out the foreground, and a few little birds in there. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do like, subscribe and share. I'll pop another video here and a playlist here, and I shall see you next time. Bye.